Today I'm joined with Bubba Gaeddert, the Executive Director of the Varsity Esports Foundation. Bubba, how are you doing?
I am great, Alex. How are you, sir?
Doing well. Thanks so much for joining us today. Really appreciate it.
Man, I just keep learning all this cool stuff about what you guys are doing, and then I was dancing for a good 2 minutes there on your Minecraft video, and can you just play it again and we could just dance again? No, that's okay. But no,
I
I'm
wish.
so glad to be here, man. Thanks for having me.
Awesome. Thanks so much. Just so everyone watching knows, if you guys have any comments for me or Bubba, feel free to leave a comment there and we'll try to get to it either through Twitch or Facebook. Yeah, sounds good. Cool. So just kind of getting into it, Bubba, tell us a little bit about yourself and how you got involved in the gaming and esports industry.
Yeah, it's a 8-year-old journey of my dad working at Radio Shack when I was a kid, and just being into building old computers and playing remote control cars and doing all sorts of just nerdy stuff that I love and I continue to love for years, and being really into video games over the years, World of Warcraft since it came out in December of 2004 to off and on as a recreational wower, I guess could be a term. I have no idea. And then I've also worked in the traditional sports space for 20 years through nonprofits. So I'm excited. I'm excited to be in the esports side of sports now, or activities, or tech, or STEM, whatever we want to classify esports as, because we still don't know. And for me, getting into this industry was really just, a God thing for me to be able to go into something like video games that I love, plus working in the nonprofit space and working with people in need and students in need for years, and working in ministry and working in schools and the K-12 level and still teaching in the college level. Like, it just excites me to be able to support an industry that I think has got no ceiling and also needs a lot of help, because we got to be proactive about it. And I could have gone and started a sports foundation and started helping youth in the inner cities, but I saw that there weren't any really for esports. And when we met together with a bunch of us back in 2017, the idea of the foundation was really built out of necessity, that there's kids in the suburbs who have access to gaming and esports clubs, but the kids in the inner city don't, and then for that matter, the rural. So this is why we're here, but I'd rather us be funded out of existence so we don't have to exist. The community and government could help, take on those roles instead.
No, I agree completely, and I completely resonate with you on how you said you spent like a bit of your childhood in like a Radio Shack and being involved with like technology early on. My dad's in STEM, so that kind of got me down the same field. Now, is there when was the first time you kind of decided to pursue esports? Because obviously being around technology is a massive field. So why did you like kind of narrow in on gaming?
Yeah, for me, I was working at a Chamber of Commerce Sports Commission here in the Kansas City area. And part of the role I had in the Sports Commission was to help bring physical sporting events to town for people to use facilities and stay in hotels and eat restaurants and spend dollars and provide, tourism dollars. And I love board games and I love video games. And I thought, man, we could use this conference space we had, this new conference space, and we could create, anything we wanted to. I had people talk to me about wrestling matches or boxing or whatever. And then it'd be really cool to have like a board game convention. And so I had a friend that actually is a board game creator, and we got to talking and meeting with a lot of people in Kansas City. And then I kind of said, what about video games? Is there video game stuff like that? And I had already started watching every morning. I'd wake up and watch one of the first Facebook gaming streamers called Darkness429. I'd wake up every morning and watch this guy and really just understand streaming and understand what that was, and realizing it's the radio model. And the radio model of first time caller, long time listener. Hey, I just to say you got a great show. Same thing here. Hey, $5 to Alex's stream. And hey, Bubba, thanks for the $5, man. I appreciate it. Oh my gosh, he said my name. Just like you would say, honey, I got on the radio. So it's that radio model that works for people for recognition.
Right.
So as all these things were happening, I'm learning about streaming. I start wanting to host an event for esports and gaming and tabletop. And it turned into basically just esports, and worked with a really cool group out of Wichita, Kansas called Midwest Esports, which is now Unified Esports Association.
Right.
I met the National Association of Collegiate Esports folks here out of Kansas City as well, Michael Brooks. I met the High School Esports League, Mason and Aaron, and they all came to this event. And I had also been running my own stream as a streamer, but I was building art for other streamers, not really gaming.
Okay.
And so all this was happening at the same time. I ran this event, and then I talked to Mason at the HSCL and learned about all the schools. And I said, man, there really needs to be a nonprofit to really support those inner city schools. And so a couple of us got together. We founded it in 2018. And then I was asked, like, hey, we need somebody to run this full time. And so last summer I came on full time to run the foundation. And it's been a wild ride for almost a year now.
That's awesome. And it's a fantastic foundation. Definitely kudos for you
Thanks.
for seeing that was needed in the community and adding that. Kind of going into like esports, were there anything about like formalized educational experiences, that helped you go into that field specifically?
Yeah, for me, I mean, I'm in sports. I've been training referees, and I've been training and certifying referees through when I was at the YMCA, and hiring and firing and all this other sort of stuff with in sports. I also been teaching for about 8 years at a local NAI university here in Kansas City in the sports department through coaching, officiating, team sports, other stuff. And in college, when I was in college, I was an actually older college student. I had started working at the YMCA right out of high school. It was the YMCA I would jog past. And before I went to go play soccer in college, I was jogging past there and just went and got a job working in the fitness department. And then over years, I was working at the Y and seeing all these needs for sports. And then for me, when I was working there, I was going to college off and on after I played soccer in college for a little bit, and I moved on to a different university, went to Oklahoma State. I joined the recreation program for recreation leisure services management. And the teachers recognized that I was running the YMCA sports in Stillwater, Oklahoma, and said, "You're not learning anything. We'll make you a pseudo graduate assistant." So it was nice to kind of also teach while I was getting my undergrad, and that kind of really kicked it off. My mom's a teacher; she's been teaching art for years, and all this stuff kind of really has just pushed me into education and excited to teach. And I teach at church, and I work with the youth and stuff. I just love that experience. So lastly, all of that kind of really pushes me towards education to want to support as many students as possible. And I'm a dork dad, I make bad jokes. The college students luckily have phones so they can do something else when I'm rambling on like now. But yeah, but I mean, that's kind of where we are. And this foundation is all scholastic based. So.
Yeah, that's awesome. And it's really cool how you kind of took your background with recreation, your background with education, and kind of morphed those together when you entered this field. I think that's super cool. Now, even though you have those experiences with education and recreation, was there anything that really caught you off guard that was maybe different with the esports industry compared to those?
Yeah, it was actually interesting. Understanding the segmentation of esports and how left hand doesn't know what the right hand is doing. There's people in Florida doing the same thing people in California are doing, and they think we're the only person doing this kind of esport or organization or whatever. And I get to talk to both of them and say, hey, do you know these people? And so over this year, I've had tons of fun Zoom calls and chats with people really all across the globe, and just seeing that there's people all passionate about things in their community, but thinking they're on an island. And it was what's interesting about that was when I worked in the Chamber of Commerce and Sports Commission world, it's very much that this is our community. Even at the YMCA, I can take it to really just about every nonprofit I've worked in. This is our community. This is how we run it, and it's not the same as the one, 80 miles away in a different metro.
Right.
And same thing with Chamber of Commerce, Sports Commission, cities for that matter that I've worked in, Parks and Rec, esports. This idea of we're in a silo, and I noticed that when I say back to the chamber, we would have statewide. I was over the statewide sports coalition for Kansas, and we were all doing it different. So we all tried to do things more congruent and more concise, and it took some time because there's all sorts of good old boy mentality to things. So it surprised me that there was segmentation, but I understood that I can have a conversation with you, Alex, and then my next phone call later is going to be with somebody else. I'm like, man, do you know what Alex is doing at DePaul? This is really cool. And that's just kind of the string. I just kind of keep bringing people into it, and I'm like, we've got to connect everybody.
Absolutely. And that massive network, I think, also just really increases productivity overall. It just kind of creates like an infrastructure of stuff that colleges or collegiate level, anyone could really use moving forward. So I definitely agree with you there. With the esports industry as a whole, how do you think it's adapted to COVID-19? How has COVID-19 affected it for better or for worse?
Yeah, I think we've all been talking about this since March. And I mean, I even wrote a paper on LinkedIn, the fourth week of March or whatever, about esports versus COVID-19. At that point, I think it still rings true that esports is resilient. I know in the school space, even talking with Courtney earlier and you, like, there's opportunity to still compete with esports when everybody else is trying to meet, and then schools keep getting closed and sports keep getting shut down, and you can't use your wind instruments in band because you're going to spread germs, and now we can't have band. So everything is happening again with the shutdown. And because we've all kind of been in this world for about 6 months now, the idea of esports being able to be something that people can compete in, even though you shut down live events all across the globe and you turn conferences virtual, or even your tournaments virtual for esports, COVID has definitely brought to light a lot of things. Actually, let me put it this way. COVID has brought to light issues in schools, in government, in sports, in systemic inequality, everything. Right. And then we've all expedited by not only adapting, but creating new ways. Even my wife at our church had to create new ways to work and minister to volunteers and people, and not just adapt like, oh, we're moving online, like they've already online, but they've got to create new things. There's been this big expedite of, like, even groups that were looking at doing stuff next year have said, we got to start this now. And especially in esports, you've seen over the past few years, a lot of mergers and acquisitions and growth and shrinking, and that's going to keep happening. And that's a big thing on Facebook, is a lot, or LinkedIn is a lot of mergers and acquisitions and partnerships. It's good, but you're going to have this expansion and the shrinkage in the industry a lot over and over, because these people are either side of the coast, not knowing what either one's doing, and then they partner, and then somebody buys them out. It's just going to happen.
Right.
But I think COVID, unfortunately, as how bad it is for all of our lives, it has shown esports to people who would have never understood what it was. So esports literacy is huge for us, and we are all benefiting by getting more people understanding of what gaming and esports is, rather than what we've been doing for 50 years is perpetuating video games bad. And we say video games bad, stay in the basement, drink your soda, eat your chips, but we don't say, football player, quit working out. It's so lame that you're working out. Quit doing that. Quit doing that exercise stuff. You're not going to go anywhere. We don't do that.
Right.
We've been perpetuating it pretty bad for gaming for years.
No, I definitely agree with you. And I do think this is definitely a good opportunity for esports. I mean, even just for me, just being able to like compete and be able to watch esports has helped me a lot mentally, while sports are down and there's really not a whole lot of competitive nature to watch. And I do think it's a great time. I mean, esports has been featured on like ESPN and like huge networks, and I can't even imagine how many new people it's expanded to just over this quarantine time.
Yeah, 100%.
So I definitely agree with you there. We do have one question in the chat from Courtney. She says she's interested in hearing about your past with Parks and Recreation. How do you see esports and gaming integrated into Parks and Recreation efforts, either now or in the future?
I'll tell you, a really great organization, a person leading the recreation space in esports is a guy named Miguel Gill with the United States Esports Association. His passion is to see kids throw on an esports jersey on Saturday morning, and his parents drive him to an esports arena at their local Walmart or their gaming center, compete, go out for ice cream and come back home just like you would if it was a baseball game. Like that's exciting for the industry. Esports is 90% of what people talk about in esports, unfortunately, is business, acquisitions, history, all this stuff. And it's great, but we're missing out the information about the pipeline that you're involved in the college space. You're involved in with other ways that you're promoting esports literacy. We're missing out on all that because we're just looking at the shiny, sexy thing that's a $2 billion industry when video gaming is a $160 billion industry. I mean, it's just this much of gaming overall. And when I look at like recreation side, YMCAs, Jewish community centers, parks and recs, they're already all doing it. I mean, not all. There are already many of them doing it in the recreation space, which is a really good thing because we try in the esports industry to not to people who are new to the industry, explaining the pathway and the understanding of traditional sports to esports is helpful. But as you drill down, a lot of us in the industry don't want the same pipeline, don't want the same pathway. We want something bigger and better. We've learned from enough mistakes in traditional sports to know we can do better. And yeah, the recreational kid playing recreational at the Y could then go to middle school, and he could go to high school and go to college, go pro. There's a pathway there. Yeah. But just as much as you're a big university. DePaul is a well-known university. However, professional teams in esports aren't recruiting from colleges as much as we would like them to recruit, like they do, like professional teams recruit from colleges for traditional sports, because many pro teams will consider college as a retirement community because they're picking up 18 and 13-year-olds to be a part of their group because they're faster, quicker, and they have a brand they can sell.
Absolutely.
And the recreational side, it has to be there because kids want competition. Luckily, you can do competition as a 13-year-old. A kid I work with here in Kansas City, we were just playing Fortnite together yesterday. Well, he carried me, of course, but he was like 13 points away from going to the Fortnite Cup last year.
Oh, wow.
And he can compete without being a part of any organized league, which is part of why gaming is great. And you can be social. All the stuff we know is important. But when you add that element of recreation and being in part of a Y or a Parks and Rec and actually a league running locally, you get the same feel goods that you do of getting the orange slices after a baseball game. And that's really important for us to kind of explore, because when we get out of all this and we can do stuff like that on a regular basis without fear of everything, then the parents that I see are cheering in the background or on the screen, on the TV, or on their laptop in the next room, like cheering them on just like they would from the stands. And it'll be a possibility even more once we start realizing that people like Miguel Gill at United States Esports Association are trying to help people pursue that for their families.
Absolutely. No, I completely agree with that. And I can definitely see how esports can disrupt that pipeline. And I think, and I mentioned this before, I think a big difference between that and traditional sports are just the physicality of it, right? If you have a college student against a middle schooler, obviously the college student will win. But with esports, who knows? That middle schooler could just be 20 times better for all we know.
Yeah, and then all the news that's coming out that all of us are highly focused on is female in girls in gaming and STEM. It's big, and to that point, we get to talk about esports as being a benefit because it doesn't require two teams at your school. It doesn't require male and female. It doesn't require a adaptive class either. You can have. We all know this stuff. This is important stuff for us to tell our communities about. All kids are welcome, and 97% of kids almost all play video games, so why not include them?
Absolutely. It's definitely super inclusive. Just kind of moving forward, we do have one more question through Facebook from Rigo. Thanks so much for your question. It says, you talked a little bit about how COVID has shown a spotlight on systematic inequalities. What ways do you think gamers or people in esports industry can help to address these inequalities moving forward?
Well, I grew up one of 10 white kids in my school growing up, and I love growing up in the inner city, and I would never change it. I got to see things that my friends in the suburbs didn't see, but I didn't know how to. There's no way I could have lived in the same shoes as my friends growing up. I still had privilege. I still had privilege as the only white guy on my street, and it sucks. And this week with Jake Taylor, or not Jake Taylor, is that right? Because there's another guy. That's not right. There's a guy I know his name. Anyways, the guy that got shot in the back this week, Randa Taylor, that's what I was going for.
Right.
George, and everybody, like Floyd, like if we're not talking about this stuff now, then when? Right? If we're not talking about systemic inequality and issues with divisiveness in all of our political spectrum, then when are we going to talk about it?
Absolutely.
And the fun part about what I get to do is tell a Title I school, we will help you. We are here for you. You don't have the same, the playing field is not the same for you. And we recognize that. And I think the esports industry needs to realize that they can make a bigger splash in the community of esports by doing something with more impact rather than just putting their logo on a stage in a big event that's on TV. Like, that's good, support it. It's great. You get your logo out, but more and more, how can you really take an industry that's on fire, that has no ceiling, and you're throwing money on big names, but how could you instead provide a scholarship fund through us? We have scholarship funds organizations can create. We have multiple of them right now as a nonprofit public charity. Create a whatever organization you're with, Coca-Cola scholarship fund, and we're helping students in schools in low income areas that definitely struggle with systemic inequality due to years of redlining and job application not hiring people because of their name, or not letting people go to college, and that's affected generations. And we want to make sure that happens. So if there's any big companies out there, we don't need a cut of it. We're not trying to make money. We're a nonprofit. What we want to do is say, we're going to give you access to be able to provide a fund, and you should make a bigger impact with something that benefits more people rather than just your logo.
Right. Absolutely. And that's a great message. It's very powerful. I definitely agree. Kind of going off of that and thinking like about esports long-term, things that we could see changing, where do you think esports will be? What major developments could you see? What would happen to esports down the line 5 to 10 years in the future?
Well, I think I alluded to earlier, it's a lot of growth and acquisition.
Right.
Man, next month's going to be totally different. Even if there wasn't COVID, like, next month's going to be way different for esports. And next 6 months will be very interesting for esports. There'll be a lot of new games out, and the top games will change like they do. And schools will start seeing more value. I talked to a lot of colleges. I was on a college group. I think Courtney interviewed on the Dell one maybe a few weeks ago. I don't know if you were on that one too. I can't remember.
Yeah, I was.
Yeah, I thought so. Yeah, so that one, Danielle Rourke, we're on a call this morning and talking about what I've been saying this for a few months, and I didn't know really anybody believed the same thing as I did, but many colleges are slapping an E on communication classes and calling it their esports program and making money off of it. And somebody alluded to, like, that's predatory. And I'm like, wow, I never heard of it like that. I've been pretty vocal about, like, get experts like Alex or Courtney on your team to teach esports and educate your campus. I know Connor, Coach Alney, who was on staff with me, now he works for High School Esports League, but he's the CEO of esports on TikTok. And I remember him talking about when he got before he got hired on as the head coach at Ottawa University, the interview was them asking questions about what esports was to hire an esports coach. That was 2 hours worth of conversation, him filling them in.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, it's probably a pretty common thing on a lot of colleges. There's 5,000 colleges on the United States. 2,000 of them have esport clubs, and maybe only 400 of the administrations know about, like, these things because it's varsity or not.
Right.
So yeah, I don't know if I in all this space, what you're asking is what's it going to look like? It's going to be different because people are still learning.
No, absolutely. And I definitely agree with you. This is like an industry that changes so fast that it's something that it's kind of hard to, keep up with. I mean, I'm currently in computer science, and they always say by the time you graduate in computer science, the whole field has changed. And I feel like with esports, it's like that tenfold. So it's definitely going to be interesting how they add formalized education to esports. Of course, there's some esports classes, like you said, but they're kind of not ironed out yet. So I'm kind of interested in what kind of paths that will lead you down the line.
Yeah, my alma mater, I talked to them this week. I went to an Oklahoma State in Oklahoma. I went down to speak with them in December about things, and they were looking at building an esports arena and having curriculum and running the part of leagues and bringing students in with admissions. And I got off a really good phone call with them this week, and they're taking like an extra year to make sure their course and certification is right before they just throw it out. And I thought that's very admirable. And it's a bunch of nerds creating it like us who understand esports rather than just an academic, which luckily there's both in a lot of places.
Absolutely.
And I mean, 35-year-olds are the majority of gamers in the United States anyway. So it's a lot of those people are educators and gamers as well.
Right. Absolutely. And that's great to hear that they're taking a little more time, hopefully getting people that have a lot of hands-on experience in the field. Awesome. So I just wanted to give our viewers one more reminder. Feel free to leave some comments or questions in the chat, and we'll try to get to them. We have a few more questions here before we finish up, so try to get those in sooner than later. Cool. So kind of going into thinking about like college students, do you have any advice for students looking to get into the esports industry? And I kind of want to divide this into two questions.
Okay.
One maybe as from a player perspective, and one is more of like a business perspective.
Well, Alex, they kind of tie in together nowadays. And I'll use a little LeBron example and this traditional sports example. For a high school coach trying to get a football player to help them get recruited, or a basketball player to go to college, they're going to use things like max preps and huddle to show off highlights. You've seen a lot more of high school students making their own clips for sports. And think about what high school students and college students do now with all their Twitch streams and everything. They're making clips. So if you're looking at the player perspective and the business perspective, they tie hand in hand because, like I mentioned earlier, those pro teams are recruiting a lot younger, but they're buying. They're not just recruiting players because of their ladder ranking or their tournament wins. They may get players who are as trashy as I am, but they have a brand that brings in ticket sales or merchandise sales. And that's now when I look at let's say for DePaul Esports, if you're recruiting just as much as we try to recruit for normal work and looking at people's social media, or even for your football team, basketball team, the recruiting players to see if they haven't, like usually it's seeing athletes to see if they haven't done anything too outlandish on their social media. But what happens with esports, it's that plus how is their brand, and maybe that brand helps our university, and that helps sell online concurrent viewers. Absolutely. Because there's a following and a community around that player. So when I look at what advice I would give to a high school student, college student going into either college esports, let's just say, from a high schooler's perspective, you can build brand awareness, you can win tournaments, you can be good, you can take clips and build montages and all sorts of stuff for free. But you can also just be a good player and get noticed somehow. But it's a lot harder to get noticed that way. I know the coaches I talk to in college space trying to find players to recruit, they've got to use HSCL Discord. I mean, there's 16,000 people in that Discord, and a lot of them are high schoolers. So they got to use something like that to find high schoolers in their area, because there's a lot of great programs out there, a lot of great kind of social media clipping, building your brand groups out there and apps that you can help. But so from the business side, you may want to learn marketing, you may want to learn brand management. You may want to hire somebody on Fiverr to help you brand management, because you could get sponsorship deals as well. And there's not a lot of NCAA oversight on esports and money right now, because in name, image, and likeness, and they're definitely, if you're an esports athlete at any university, there's not a whole lot of regulation around the country, and you're able to kind of cash in on that as a player. And have deals and come into college with sponsorship deals and it not be an amateur violation, because there's no sanctioning regulations on gaming or esports in colleges really right now. So you've got to take it in your own hands just as much as you got to, if you work out and go to practice or whatever for any other sport or activity or band or writer or anything. You've got to take it on your own hands.
Absolutely, I agree completely. I really liked how you said if you're going into trying to become a player down the line, you really have to include your brand image. I mean, just thinking about a lot of games, there's some players that are incredibly good, but they're just kind of off the radar, and there's other players that might be on the same level, but you just see their name everywhere. And I think a lot of that has to do with if they're streaming all the time, if they're on Twitter, if they're really active on social medias and getting their name out there. So I agree with that.
I watched Tim the Tatman every day because I hung out with him at TwitchCon and I enjoyed hanging out with him, and I watch him because he's terrible but good and he's funny, and that's entertainment for me. I'll pay $5 a month for that subscription. It's just as good as watching Netflix every night. So brand awareness, even if you're trash.
Absolutely. And also he finally got a Fall Guys win. So
that you know what's funny about that, Alex, is Ninja playing with Drake 2 or 3 years ago was this pinnacle point of gaming and esports and streaming.
Right.
That moment last week was like the second one. That where ESPN is like dogging him for being horrible, and 350,000 viewers or whatever on Twitch isn't the record, but for him that's 1,000-fold his 30,000 he usually has. So it was a pivotal moment in gaming, and people outside our endemic brands and industry being engaged in something that this is silly. It's a video game. Somebody playing it and being horrible. But I also loved watching him fail miserably at Rage and that one, and him failing at Who Wants to Be Smarter Than a Fifth Grader last year. That thing cracked me up. Him just knowing an answer and just like he's an entertainer.
Yeah, absolutely, and he does a great job doing it.
Mm-hmm.
Definitely really enjoyed that Fall Guys.
Yeah, that was so good.
Absolutely. Cool. So we have one more question. So it's for high school students who are trying to start an esports team at their school, or / they already have a team. What can they do to convince their admins or / school for funding, etc., especially if the students cannot reach out to outside organizations like VEF for help due to school restrictions?
Yeah, Xiao, I would say if you're having issues with reaching out, then it's finding an adult champion in your school to be able to reach out for you. Schools have sometimes restrictions, just like they do on restrictions on leagues or equipment, and that's understandable because it's a top-down issue. However, power's in the school. The power's in the high school. Many states have regulations on what they can play and what games they can play or not, but the power is with the principal and not the district a lot of the times, especially when it comes to school activities like this. You can play Rocket League and not feel like you're making the world fall apart because it is not a shoot 'em up game. Let's see, they're asking. So I'm not asking for my school. It's more of a problem I see for my friends in other districts. For my school, so I guess the answer would be go to our website, Varsity Esports Foundation.org. We have online videos that anyone could take that are free about what is esports and learning esports literacy right there in the chat, right there on the bottom of the screen. And you can take some of our esports education. Mike Russell's in the chat. He also is the creator of some of the curriculum that we have that you definitely need your school to use in high school, because it's the world's only free comprehensive textbook for esports in high schools. Mm-hmm. And go to our website and use it, because then that's another in for your teachers and administration to add it as a class or as an after school program. But really, anything you do, you're gonna, if you can get people like us to come and talk to administrators, we'll help with a 180 for these people. Yeah.
Absolutely. And also sometimes it's just about kind of being lucky. I mean, thinking about my high school, they just started esports recently after I graduated, unfortunately. And I think the reason behind that was just because they got lucky and hired a teacher that was just super into Smash, and he kind of presented this. So sometimes, unfortunately, it's just about getting lucky, or maybe if you can reach out to a teacher that you think could help represent you, that might be a step in the right direction as well. Yep. Cool. So kind of trying to wrap things up a little bit. Can you tell us about some of like the great work you're doing over at the Varsity Esports Foundation?
Well, I'll just reiterate the partners we have. Mike Russell, who's in the chat, him and Dr. Christy Custer created that curriculum that you can download from our website. It's in partnership with STEM.org as well as the High School Esports League. They're the longest and largest running league for high schools for about 8 years now, and over 3,000 schools. And I absolutely loved that we found them in Kansas City years ago. And Mike is right down the road in Wichita, and those kind of things where it's teaching soft skills, it's college and career readiness through the lens of esports, it's breaking down barriers so students can actually be a part of a club. And I don't always like to use the chocolate on the broccoli example, but that's what it is, the same as robotics is. Robotics in high schools 10 years ago is what esports is right now. It was very much I don't think this is going to work. This is why are we letting kids build robots in school? But STEM is a movement. I mean, Andrew Raup at STEM.org, STEM is a movement he created he's helped create in late 90s, early 2000s. Mm-hmm. And it helps us be more prepared as a nation to compete on a global scale on the workforce level for science, technology, engineering, math, and arts. But this is the fun stuff I get to do at the foundation. And as a one-man show, I get to go around and just help people understand esports and get on awesome podcasts for people who like you, who get it and are doing great things that I get to know about, so I can go and talk about you guys and what you do. Right. And other than that, all the stuff I've kind of talked about on grants and scholarships and financial assistance, providing support, but really education, awareness, advocacy is big for us around digital citizenship, cyberbullying, mental health, diversity, inclusion, suicide prevention. Those are big things to us, because if we're not proactive about them now as the industry, then we're too late. Right. And I look at all the fun organizations we get to partner with, like Bark or Fight Song, other organizations that are helping combat bullying in and out of school, and saying, like, instead of me like getting a whole big board of people together to make a big curriculum about anti-bullying in games, find the people who are doing it and say they're doing it great. Everybody should be a part of this. That's what we like to do, is find partners rather than just reinventing the wheel. And then lastly, our big thing with Coach Alney, who is a volunteer now for us, he helped create our Esports Education Network that you can go on and take our What is Esports course. We have a whole 2.5-hour certification for K-12 schools for getting esports in your school, rolling out a coaches esports certification for middle school, high school coaches that's coming out this next month. It's like a 1.5-hour course, but you get professional development and potentially with some friends like our friends in Mike and Christy, Wichita State may be giving some actual college credit for this course. And maybe DePaul wants to do it too. I don't know, but getting college credit for a course for these teachers who are in your area. We have a lot of schools around you guys that we know that are playing high school esports and middle school. And a lot of those coaches, if they can have some sort of certification where they get professional development hours and college credit, right, they get to raise their pay scale. That's a really fun thing for the teachers. Then it really gives back to them in something that nobody's doing, because you can get certifications in, pedagogy or anything like in physical science or English, but there's nothing in esports until we start really making it. And that's what we're trying to accomplish.
It's definitely awesome. Definitely just a great mission with your foundation. I think kind of just going into, everything be online, it's easier and easier to like bully or have mental health issues than like ever before. So I think tackling that hands-on is like really smart. I also really like implore kind of promoting STEM. I think STEM is like the way of the future. I was like super into Minecraft Redstone. I'm not sure if you're familiar, but it got me into like basic like logic. And the next thing I know, I'm now like going to be a software engineer eventually. So
that's awesome.
Yeah. So, I definitely think it's like a great stepping stone, kind of like you said. So definitely a great foundation. Definitely check them out. Anyone watching here. And did you have a website for us?
Yeah. The Varsity Esports Foundation.org. We've got really anything on there. You could apply for financial assistance for your school or your community organization. You can see a lot of data. We just partnered today with the International Journal of Esports to put out as much data and research as we can about the benefits of esports, as well as this understanding the stigmas around it. And alongside, you can go to our site and also get to our Esports Education Network, which is just a department within our foundation that is really truly a network. So if you have curriculum or content you want to put on the network for us to share with you, or potentially you have create revenue through that, we'd love to help. And so it's all there on our website, and you can find us on Twitter and Facebook and Instagram, Varsity Esports Foundation.
Awesome. Thanks so much. And just as one last question, kind of curious, what is your favorite game, either to watch or to play?
I've really definitely been watching a lot of Call of Duty the past few months, and I played a lot of it. Our men's group from church, when COVID hit, we couldn't really hang out, as much, so we all started playing Call of Duty together at night. And then our wives created a Facebook group, wives of Call of Duty dads, and they're let's just say their group fizzled out quickly. Ours stayed strong, but I have played a lot of Fortnite recently with a buddy from high school, and then since for 15, 16 years, I've off and on played World of Warcraft. So I say right now I'm into Call of Duty for sure.
Cool. And do you see that? I think today we got like a teaser or a leak or something about Black Ops Cold War. So definitely really exciting things to look forward to. Just as one last note, Courtney said, not esports related, but inquiring minds have to know. I see the Deathly Hollow symbol in the background. If you could only pick one of the hollows, which would you pick?
Wow. I know my wife and I have talked about this before. Let me here, Courtney, let me do this. Let me do the Who Wants to Be a Millionaire thing. Okay. Well, I think it's B, but let me go through B. You know how they talk about it forever, because that's how you get viewers. Obviously, we're at the end of the show. So this is the $1 million question. Well, let's then analyze the Elder Wand. The Elder Wand has a lot of powers. The invisibility cloak, you can definitely hide. The resurrection stone, you can bring people back to life. Man, wow, that's a really tough question. I probably say 100% the wand, the Elder Wand, because if I could manage it and not go evil, like a Dumbledore, like he didn't go evil, but obviously he has some history with his sister and all this other stuff. I've read the books way too many times. I would say if I could do good with the Elder Wand, then that's the one I would choose. But thank you, Courtney. Yes, I kind of like Harry Potter, and it shows, I think, back there. It's my wife's fault. She got me into it, and now she's like, why do you read that so many times a year? Like, why wouldn't you? I
need to get back into it. I haven't read it for years since I was a kid, but
I'm also reading the new Twilight book. That's how kind of weird I am, man. I'm an athlete who likes video games, who loves romance teen novels, because maybe that's just my reading level, I guess. I don't know.
No, I get it. I mean, at least you're like reading something, it's better than most people. For sure. Cool. Well, yeah, that's pretty much everything for me. Yeah, awesome. Thanks so much for joining us, Bubba, and thanks so much everyone for watching. Really appreciate it.
Yeah, Alex, thank you guys for having me. I love what you guys are doing. Go check out DePaul Esports. It's amazing. What they're doing over there with their red, white, and blue is too legit to quit.
I like it. Well, awesome. Just also go check out Varsity Esports Foundation. Definitely an awesome work, doing a lot of awesome stuff for high schools and colleges. And yeah, definitely go check them out. Cool. Well, thanks so much, everyone, for watching. Really appreciate it. Take it easy, guys.